Hello, my name is Kyle Ramirez, and I'll be sharing my screen. All right, just move this. Start. All right, my name is Kyle Ramirez, and today I'll be presenting section assignment 5, Declining, by yours truly. First, with the images, um, as you can see here, we have two vehicles dumped, just absolutely trashed, and children just playing on top of these vehicles. Of course, this is dangerous, vehicle might be rusted, might be having some problems with that, could get cut potentially, and just trash all over. The water here, you may not be able to see it. Absolutely done. It's just done. It's full of oil. It's polluted. It's just not good for the environment. You know, probably has zero fishing capabilities. And another thing I wanted to point out is the trees. Trees in the back, they look dead. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's winter. And of course, energy crisis here with no gas, zero gas to work with during the energy crisis. It was hard to find, probably expensive as well. And we're going to be comparing this to terrorism, early terrorism in the 21st century. Now, this image here, I believe, just holds so much power and so much significance to United States history. It was something I got taught early on. I wasn't alive during the time, but I did get taught this while I was a young age, elementary. Moving forward, the environmental crisis of the 1970s. With the rise of the environmental movement, it was clear that the environmental crisis was a clear problem. No pun intended, but look at the smog. It was a clear problem. Living conditions were terrible. Not living conditions, but because of the pollution. During the time, the pollution caused smog that made it just difficult for people to see. And walking down the street becomes dangerous. Driving, it becomes dangerous. Imagine being a bystander, walking down the street, and the car just zooming past. With the smog, you can't even see the car. It becomes dangerous. It's a dangerous environment when you can't see. Visibility is zero. Moving forward with the industrial dumpings, which is hard to see in this image, but it's in this image. The problem with oil being spilled across lakes that we saw in the last image at the very beginning. Cars being dumped in the last image, of course. This damaged the wildlife severely. I mean, we're talking no fish and the water in itself. In this image, it's hard to see, but there's trash along this rock line right here. There's a dump. There used to be a nice little lake. Well, that's been replaced with oil filled water. Okay, this is not a lake anymore. This was the start of problems that we know about today, in today's age. And back in the 1970s, we acknowledged these problems that I'll get to later. But this was the start. Moving forward, terrorism in the early 21st century. Now, this was a very sensitive topic, of course. On this terrible day, marked on everybody's calendar, an unexpected attack came about September 11, 2001. Two planes had been hijacked and purposely crashed into the Twin Towers in New York. Now, I wanted to touch briefly on the Twin Towers in itself, which, in my opinion, the Twin Towers, they signified like the United States fortitude, right? It's a symbol of power to be able to have, these buildings that are just towering, just incredible buildings, amazing forms of architect that many countries like they can't have. And it just signifies our power in a way is it holds lots of symbolism that goes beyond a building. But this was just knocked down by a planned terrorist attack. This, of course, resulted in many lives lost. The lives that were lost on that day, they will never be forgotten. Hashtag always remember. And many actions were taken after that I will get into later. The actions that were taking place, I would get into that later. Now, I just wanted to quote my professor, Mr. Olmsted, that said, this is a day that everybody remembers what they were doing. I was watching that lecture live. Whenever you said that, it hit me like this is something that people generally do remember what they were doing, even if it's random, just drinking a cup of coffee. It's just something that just hits me. I know if I asked my mom right now, she would probably remember too what she was doing. I don't doubt it. Moving forward, which brought about a period of decline. Now, this answer for me, it was both of them. Both of them brought about a period of decline in different ways, of course. But the severity, in my opinion, is even. Firstly, with the environmental crisis in the 1970s. This problem has a period of decline because it was something that we still suffer from today. And you may be wondering, Al, suffer from today? What are you talking about? What do we suffer from today that happened in the 1970s? I'll tell you, global warming. Global warming is what is happening here. This was a problem that we identified in the 1970s. We might have not known the specific word, but it's global warming. Now you know what we're suffering from. Another subject that I wanted to take point in is the climate clock. This right here, the climate clock. This climate clock, what it is it's a timer that's set. And once that timer goes off, it's like the time period before climate change is irreversible, before we cannot change anything about global warming. And this holds significance because this was a problem that we identified in the 70s that might have even been happening before. Another point that I wanted to get to is that the environmental crisis in the 1970s, even though it was in the United States, it's a world problem. It's not a United States problem, it's a world problem because it leads to global warming. This is something that I identified in my discussion board post when we talked about specifically the environmental crisis, that this is a world problem, not a United States problem. And I'll add on to that later. Moving forward with terrorism in the early 21st century. This caused a period of decline because it resulted in war. Okay, the amount of resources that are needed for war, it's vast. It's a big number, especially economically. It takes a hit, and of course, the United States was not going to let themselves be vulnerable. Another subject is new rules and restrictions with airports. The rules that we see today firmly stem from this specific attack. The security has been revamped 1000%. It is hard security. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't let me go with this piece of rubber on an airplane. I wouldn't be surprised. Also resulted in war. And another point is that the United States was vulnerable. On their own land, for the first time, they were vulnerable. This was an attack on real American soil. They were vulnerable for the first time. history. Moving forward, Reagan's conservatism and how it impacts. God, how does this connect? Well, with the conservatism mindset and with those rulings and dictations that are being placed, military spending was increased. This means the army, the United States Army, it's advancing. It's advancing quickly. More money is being put in. The army is moving forward. Okay? More money means more planes. More planes, new planes. New tanks, more tanks. Jets, skis, everything. Now, this relates to terrorism in the early 21st century because we established our power with our army early on. And when the attacks happened, we went into war. Okay? We were caught with our pants down for the first time in American history. And we went into war. And I'll even say because of this conservatism and because of this high military that we have in our power, I mean, we're the strongest military. We're one of. We're up there. It connects. It connects. This is the bibliography. I wanted to get back onto the slide because I wanted to answer another question was which one had a worse period of decline? And many people would probably think, oh, there's a clear answer to this, which I think differently. Because many people would probably think terrorism is not at the level of an environment. They think terrorism is up here, in which I disagree. I believe the environmental crisis is on par, and sometimes it might even be above that when it comes to severity. Okay? Now, this is because, like I said, I was going to go back to this point. It's a world problem, not a United States problem. It's the entire world that this affects. We might not even be able to drink water. That's been my presentation. Thank you.